baseball, and it had some effect, I'm sure. But anyway, that's I felt fine when I got down to the States. I think in my mind I'm more American than I am Canadian, but it's just a border that separates people. I always consider Americans, the greatest neighbors we have, and hopefully the Americans feel the same way about us. So we'll leave it like that.
So it sounds to me like you had a really, really good experience in the Dodger organization. And, of course, you make it to the big team in 61 and 62, but as you brought up, there was a logjam of guys on the minor league level, and there was also a logjam of guys on the major league level.
Oh, yeah.
By the time you get there, Gil Hodges is kind of on his last leg, so to speak.
He was done, yeah. And then they traded a guy named Norm Larker. He wasn't a power hitter. He was a line drive hitter. He was a wonderful hitter. He played first base, and the White Sox were interested in him. So, they were grabbing anything that was available from the Dodgers because they were so well trained and coached. And so when he went, I got an opportunity. And unfortunately, we had Ron Fairley. I mean, I was in 95 games in 62, and I probably started about 50 games. But, I played a lot of defense and, pinch hit and stuff like that. And in all fairness, I think I got hurt by that experience. I was, I finished strong in the Coast League the year before. And, when I got called up in 61, I hit the ball really well with him, and so when you got Ron Fairley to fight off for the job, and then he'd switch off with Frank Howard, who was a big power hitter in right field. So it cut my time down, but I understood that. But I was part of one of the finest teams ever put together, and I think if Koufax had not come up with that miserable circulatory problem he had in his fingers and his arm, that he was gone for over 2 months, and if he had just taken a regular season, I'm sure he won 30 games. He won 14, so we'll give credit to other pitchers took his place and give them say 10, and we tied for the pennant with the Giants at 104 games. We won 104 and lost in a very dramatic experience in the playoff against the Giants. And so they sort of cleaned house, and I was one of the guys. I was traded out to New York. And
Now I got to ask you this. So you go from really the pinnacle of baseball, National League Baseball, which is the Dodgers. I mean, even though they lost to the Giants and the Giants wound up winning the pennant,
right.
Well, I hate saying those words. I really do hate saying those words. But even though that happened, and there's still the pinnacle because the Dodgers were poised to win for like the next 5 or 6 years based on the team they had. And then you go to, let's just say, the worst team in the history of baseball, the New York Mets, who the year before won 40 games, lost 120, and they would have lost 122, but they had 2 games rained out. So you get to lose those 2. How did you feel going from the pinnacle to the poorhouse in 1 year?
Well, as the old saying is, I went from the penthouse to the outhouse, so to speak. And I would have to, I saw the difference, when I joined. Of course, in the expansion team, I was in their second year. But I saw a lot of guys, and I shouldn't be too critical of that. And some were just hanging on, trying to, keep the job and so on. And I could see things happening. When I joined them,
Tim, if I could interrupt here,
sure.
Wouldn't you also think that as an opportunity because they're an expansion club?
Yeah, there's always opportunities, and I was grateful. It didn't matter to me where I went as long as I was going to play, and so and playing for Stengel was a tremendous experience. I think he was so valuable. He was the most valuable man on that ball club, and due to the fact that we had an awful team, and and he sort of deflected all the attention onto himself, so that we end up probably outdrawing the Yankees. I don't know. I wouldn't imagine. I imagine we probably did.
Yeah, that's true. The Mets outdrew the Yankees, I believe, for the first years in their existence.
He's a marvelous man, and I was glad to have known him. I got along very well with him, and he was good to me. He played me but as I say, I just go back to a few minutes ago when I was saying, I had my fingers all smashed, and they almost amputated one of my fingers because of circulatory problems. But, when I come back, and he still played me, and I had to use sponges on a bat, and I had two middle fingers frozen, and finished the year that way, just struggling with it. And then, I shouldn't belabor that point. I got badly hurt in San Francisco, and I think they knew it. There was no protection, no agents to help you, and and they wanted to play Eddie Kranepool. He was the heir apparent for that job, and he got an opportunity. And when I sat in those stands for, God, I don't know, a month and a half or so, and I said to my wife one day, I said, that is a beautiful swing, and I am going to be out of a job, I think. So that's the way it went.
Before you're out of a job, take me back to a sweltering afternoon on June 30th, 1963 in the Polo Grounds.
Right.
And let's talk about what was probably your career-defining moment as a New York Metropolitan.
Right. Okay. So that was an afternoon game, very, very hot, probably, low 90s, 92, 93, very hot. And we were playing the Cubs, playing Chicago Cubs, and we went into extra innings. It was tied, and it was, stinking hot. I should say that, and I don't know. I think it was probably about 12,000 people left when we got into the 14th inning. In the 14th, the Cubs scored 2 runs and went ahead of us, 6-4, and so up we come in the bottom of the 14th. And we loaded the bases, and somebody ahead of me, I don't know what they did, hit a pop-up or something. So I think there was 2 outs. It could have been 1, but I think it was 2. I was facing a guy, I can't remember his name. He was a left-hander. I had faced him in the minor leagues, and he didn't bother me too much. So I felt, I still had an opportunity, even though I'm a left-handed hitter. So went to 2-2, 2 strikes, 2 balls, and he threw me a wicked fastball. It was I thought was a little bit low. And the umpire he changed it to a ball. So there ended up a real commotion there for about a minute. It all quieted down. And then the next pitch was a low inside fastball, and I hit it way out there over the 427 mark, and it was a grand slam. And before I got to the plate, I should tell you this. My wife was sitting there with my 2 kids who were cranky because of the weather. And they were little kids, And I told her, I said, just get in the car and go home. And they're too hot. It's too hot for them. But she said, no, I'll set it out. So I said, all right, I'm either going to strike out here or I'm going to do something. And lucky enough, I hit the grand slam, and end of the story,
Well, you do know that
I think that's still the latest inning National League home run, grand slam in National League.
It was also the first walk-off grand slam in Mets history.
I didn't know that part, but anyway,
the chat board still recognize that as your defining Met career moment.
Yeah, I got the first hit in Shea Stadium, but that was meaningless because I went. Nobody picked the ball up and threw it out. When I got that hit, but it doesn't matter. I know anyway. Shea Stadium was the opening day the following season, and huge crowd. They had a lot of problems because there was water back up into the dressing rooms. The outfield was like real sponge out there in Shea Stadium. So anyway, they got the game going, and we were playing the Pirates, and anyway, that's
and that's why they call it the big toilet is flushing.
yeah, probably so. Yeah, I remember.
Well, Elliot Maddox, when he stepped in a drain pipe, basically ruined his career. In Shea
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, when the Yankees kind of rented Shea Stadium for 2 years while the house that Ruth built was being remodeled during,
right.
I want to say 71 and 72 when
No, we're going to have to correct you on that. Producer Eric will call that
73, 74.
No, you're wrong too.
74, 75.
74, 75 were the 2 years they played in Shea Stadium.
Okay, our producer knows best. Father knows best. Well, our producer knows best. But the bottom line is, Elliot Maddox ruined his career.
Yeah, but also
Elliot Maddox ruined his career by stepping in a drainage pipe.
Wow. Yeah, things like that can happen. Usually that happens in the minor leagues, but to happen in the big leagues is kind of unusual, I would say. Anyway,
what was unusual about the way your career ended? I think you told us off camera that you once again, after a little, you saw the handwriting on the wall with Cranepool, pretty much supplanting you on the org chart. But then you went to where? The Cincinnati Reds?
I went to San Diego.
San Diego.
Okay. What happened was I was in the room. Stengel called me in the room and said, look, son, I didn't want him to do this, but they've traded you to Cincinnati. I says, well, they're fighting for a pennant, and I guess, you have to go or you have to go. And while we were sitting there, he said, have a beer with me. And we were sitting there talking about 5 minutes, and the phone rang, and it was George Weiss, who was the GM, I think, at the time. And he said, what? I saw Stengel's face change, and I said, what's going on? So he got off the phone, and he said, Tim, there's no room for you in Cincinnati. You're going to have to go to San Diego, their AAA ball club, which we turned out to be, what do they call it, minor league champions. We beat Little Rock in the playoffs.
Yes.
Went east. Anyway, I think we could have beat the Mets. It was that good a ball club. But, seriously. Anyway, Tony
a lot of people can beat the Mets these days.
Was the guy that called up to Cincinnati. And I went down there to replace him. So I was down there about a week, and they sent Tony back. I figured, well, maybe I'm going to get called back up, Anyway, Tony wasn't quite ready at that moment. So he played third base, I played first, and the story goes, we had a heck of a team, and we ended up winning the Little World Series, they call it. So I went to spring training the following year with Cincinnati, and the last game I played was against Detroit, and I hit a 2-run home run in about the 8th inning to help us win. We won the ball game by 2. And Dick Sizzler was the manager. This is the beginning of that great Reds team. It was just the early beginnings of Pete Rose and Frank Robinson, guys like that on that team. It was a hell of a team. And he said, you made the ball club and you'll be going north with the team. And I said, fine. And tell your wife to start driving north. And so I went home and told my wife. And then the following day I went in the office and they said, something's just come up. We made a trade. And Tim, we want you to go to San Diego for 2 weeks. I said, I'm not going. I said, I think I made this ball club, and, now maybe I'm talking out of order a little bit. I didn't say anything nasty, but anyway, they said, well, where do you want to go? And I said, send me to Toronto, where Dick, the guy that managed Boston Red Sox, the World Series.
Dick Williams.
Dick Williams.
I knew Dick. I was his caddy when I got called up to Montreal when I was 19. From Class D ball. They brought me up for more of a PR thing, a hometown kid and all that stuff. And anyway, Dick said, I'll take him. So I was headed for Toronto. It was a big, that was the Boston Red Sox Farm Club. Had them